My name is Dussault. So I've been playing the cello for the past 10 years of my life, as I've stated before. 3 years ago, I even entered an orchestra, where most of the people in the orchestra would play different pieces. We would construct different orchestral pieces of music, and we would play them at some concerts, and even play just for recitals or just for concerts or for anything we wanted to. Eventually, we even learned a part of Mozart's Requiem. Being a very difficult piece, we only learned the Lacrimosa, which is a section of the piece itself. The size of our group was very small, so learning the piece was actually quite difficult. But that's precisely why the feelings of the piece were more impactful to us, right? Because when we're a smaller group, that means we get along better. And the fact that we all get along means that the music can reach us as a group and not just an individual. That's exactly what the piece did. And what it tried to convey in Mozart's Requiem in D minor is the theme about death, and more importantly, the two extremes of death itself, being the bittersweet feelings of a dying person and the tragedy of death. So, about the composer himself, Mozart, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, lived a rather short life. He was born on January 27th in 1756 in Salzburg, Austria, and he died on December 5th in 1791 in Vienna, also in Austria. During his life, he would mostly compose for the royalty, and he would compose various easy pieces for other musicians to learn, like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. This piece is still being used today as a learning tool for new musicians. Also, he would write great pieces. He wrote the Great Mass in C minor, which is one of his greatest pieces of all time. All of these pieces have a huge impact on today's cultural world, and they still are revered as some of the greatest pieces in the history of music. Of all these pieces, however, there's one that stands out of all the other ones, and that is his Requiem in D minor. It's an hour-long piece that has different sections, right? Like I said before, the Lacrimosa being one of them. It has a total of 22 instruments and a choir, all of them working together to create a beautiful harmony. So what's interesting about the Requiem itself is that it was written by Mozart, obviously, but what's interesting is that he was written while he was dying. He was on his deathbed while writing that. As I said, Mozart died in 1791, and the piece was written in 1791. There's even a rumor that says that Mozart wrote his Requiem for his own funeral. So, yes, he wanted to write something that truly had meaning. So what he wanted to do was to write something that conveyed the feeling of the tragedy of death. That's what the first few sections of the Requiem are about. It's intense emotion, it's sadness, it's tragic, really, and the feelings are really there. You can easily feel something so powerful that Mozart managed to write in such a beautiful piece. But the other thing is, in the other half of the Requiem, it's more calm, it's more peaceful, and that represents the bittersweet feelings of a dying person, right? When you're dying, yes, it's sad, because obviously you're dying, but it's also good because maybe you were sick and it was better to die than to continue suffering. Or maybe you feel liberated from some burdens of life or whatever. So there's a bittersweet feeling, obviously, to death, and that's what the second part of his Requiem represented. And that also represents a part of his life, because Mozart's life was very difficult, considering that he had to write for royalty all the time. So, after writing the Requiem for a couple of weeks, Mozart eventually died, and he couldn't complete the Requiem himself. So he had enlisted a couple of his very good friends, his very trusted friends, to complete it in case he died while he was still writing the piece. These two friends managed to finish the paper in 1792, and it was published at this year. It became Mozart's most famous work, and it's still revered today as being his best work and one of the greatest pieces of music ever created. Thank you.